gang, it's your buddy Platt back for part 5 of our series on how to make sake. A quick overview so far. Part 1, we discussed the basics of sake making, gave you some basic terms, and just kind of went over what the series is going to be about. Part 2, we did something called shubo, or a yeast buildup, or a yeast mash. Part 3, we did the main mash, or the main bash buildup, where we added continuously larger portions of koji and steamed rice. Part 4, which we just finished up, was the main fermentation. Also, at the end of part 4, we pasteurized some of the sake. Some unpasteurized or unfiltered sake, we pasteurized it just to show you how to do that. Now in part 5, what we're going to do is go into a secondary fermentation, and we're first going to filter it with sake. Again, we're trying to make something now a little more traditional sake, or what we in the U.S. would think of sake. I'm using one of these brew in the bag mesh bags. This is actually pretty close to what they use in an actual sake brewery in Japan. The bags are obviously a lot larger. They may throw 100 pounds of rice in one of these bags, and then they would stack these bags and actually put them in a giant box and then press them. If you've used brew in the bags before for regular beer brewing, you would know not to press them because you would get tannins from the exterior or the husk of the grains. Sake, because they've polished that rice, they've taken the exterior husk off, they polish it down, we have nothing to get tannins from. So we could press this so we can get all that sake, that liquid juice, whatever you want to call it, out. And again, that's what they do in sake breweries. If you know much about wine production, you know they don't want to overpress the grape because, again, they're worried about tannins from the skin. But we've kind of taken the skin off in this process. So again, we're not worried about any tannins or anything, so we can press this. I'm just going to take a smaller pan, press down that to extract as much liquid out as I can out of this, and this liquid is what's going to go into our 1 gallon fermenter. We won't have a full gallon because, again, we already split some off, but that's what's going to go into our fermenter. That's what we're going to kind of cold crash, allow to settle, re-rack, and eventually that's going to become our filtered, more traditional sake. So let me get done pressing this, and then we'll come back when we fill up the fermenter. Alright, gang, so we pressed the finished rice off. We got two and a half quarts. I was hoping to get 3. Remember, we've already kind of pulled off 4 12-ounce bottles or a quart already. Given that this is our first time to do this, I think we'll be alright. As you can tell, this is pretty milky. Again, this would be just regular unfiltered sake. What we're going to do is I'm going to throw this back into my keg fridge, and we're going to let this go through secondary fermentation. We may get 1 or 2 bubbles from this, but what we want to do in that colder temperature is hopefully settle down that yeast and also allow other rice solids to settle down. Here in a few days, what we should see is a layer of just sediment, yeast, whatever, and then we could rack off with the liquid up top being just a little bit clearer. And probably what we'll do over the next couple of weeks, because secondary fermentation is recommended is another 2 weeks, probably what we'll do over those next couple of weeks is do a couple of re-racking into another fermenter and just continuously taking off whatever sediments on the bottom. So let me throw this in the kegerator, and we'll come back in about a week or so and see what we got. Alright, gang, so it's been about a week, and we can see we've got quite a bit settled. We've got about 1 inch on the very bottom. That's rice solids, dead yeast. Still get the occasional bubble or 2, so what we're going to do is take the rest of this, rack off into another fermenter. We're going to give it about another week. We'll see how much more it clears up. We'll see if the bubbles stop, and if they do, then we're done. I'm debating whether or not I want to pasteurize this or not. If I keep getting bubbles, I probably will go ahead and pasteurize it then. But like I said, about another week, and then we're probably going to wrap up this video, so we'll come back then. Alright gangs, it's been another week, and you can see we've cleared right up. For the most part, this is fairly transparent. There is a little yellowish tint hue to this. We still get the random bubble every once in a while, but what I'm going to do is rack this off again to get off that little layer we have on the bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and bottle it and then throw it in the fridge. I've decided not to pasteurize it, so what we're going to end up with is 3 different styles. We're going to have an unfiltered, unpasteurized sake, an unfiltered pasteurized sake, and then we're going to have a filtered, unpasteurized sake. So let me bottle this up, and then we'll come back to wrap this video up and kind of wrap up the series, and then I'll also talk to you about when we're going to do the tasting of this sake. So we'll be right back. Alright gang, so we're back to wrap up. This was video 5 of a 5-part series on how we made sake. Real quick, let me tell you what we ended up with. We were shooting for about a 1-gallon batch of sake. We ended up with a little less than that. We ended up with 3 types of sake: a unfiltered, unpasteurized, unfiltered, pasteurized, and then the final last half gallon or so is going to be filtered, unpasteurized sake. I decided not to pasteurize it. Real quick, let's go over what we've done in this series. We took a kit called Sake Brew Club. I'll leave a link down below if you'd like one of those kits. It had everything we needed to make sake. Now you can find this stuff individually, but they just happened to put in a kit that made a 1-gallon batch. So they gave us our polished rice. This is a special kind of rice that has the exterior polished, so it's not a regular rice you'd find in the store. Our special sake rice. They gave us special sake yeast, even though conceptually you could use another wine yeast. However, this particular yeast is bred for sake. They gave us the koji, which is the mold spore used to convert starches in the rice into sugar. They'd already inoculated some rice with that, but anyway, they gave us that koji to start off with. They gave us some yeast nutrients that you could have. If you're into home brewing, you already probably have some laying around. And then they also gave us some Epsom salt to help with the water chemistry when we were starting off. Our first step in the 5-step process was doing a yeast starter, or what they refer to as a yeast mash. The term they use is something called shubo. That took us about a week to build up and activate that yeast, and also activate the koji. And then after that, step 2 was our main mash buildup. That's where we increasingly added more and more rice and koji. Unlike brewing beer, where you generally do a mash in and a 1-hour boil, and that's it for the mash. This is a more lengthy process. We took, I believe, days 8 through 11 to do the main mash buildup. And then after that, step 3 was our that was actually the third. Next, we went into the main mash, or the main fermentation. Again, this is a more active process than homebrewing beer. We had to stir the rice and koji twice a day during that process. At the end of the main fermentation, we had a decision to make. What I did was I took some of that sake, left it unfiltered, split it in about half, and I took half of that unfiltered sake, and I did pasteurize. Showed you how to pasteurize your sake. So we had those 2 sakes. Then I took the rest of that sake and then filtered that. I used a brew in the bag, one of the classic nylon brew in the bags, but it's fairly similar to the bags they would use at a sake brewer. Anyway, filtered our sake, and then I put it into a secondary fermentation for about a week, let everything settle, racked off again to another fermenter, and we saw that cleared it up pretty much perfectly clear. Still, I had a little haze and You see in my sample here, there's still a little haze. If you want to, feel free to use a coffee filter or to filter it again if you'd like. I just decided not to. I am going to do a separate video on tasting the sake. Well, I'm combining it into another homebrew tasting. So next Monday, the next Monday video I'll post after this will be the tasting of those 3 sakes, along with a couple things I've got. I think I've got the Mr. Brown Nut Brown Ale to try, and then what happened with our Jolly Rancher experiment. So I'm just going to throw all that into a homebrew tasting video. Well, I hope you found this series interesting. I did. I will definitely probably make sake again. This time I may try to add some raspberries to it, or blueberry, try a flavored sake or something a little different. But I hope you like the series. And if you have any questions, please let me know. If anything, if I get enough questions, maybe I can do an addendum video just to cover anything. But any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Like I said, also, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them in the comment section. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. Till next time, bottoms up.